Hi everyone, welcome to Get Candid, the show about overcoming the harsh realities of getting ideas out of your head and into the world. Let's dig into the creative minds of inspiring people who dare to lead and who are willing to get a little bit candid with me, your host, Clara Piedalue. The sweet summer sounds of grinds and ollies fill the streets and the skate parks. This week on Get Candid with Clara, we drop in with our special guest, Sam Richards from the Lethbridge Skate Park Association, to talk about the art of skateboarding. Please welcome our very special guest this week, Sam Richards. Welcome to the show, Sam.
Thanks, Clara.
Thanks for rolling in.
Or blowing in.
Blowing in. Absolutely. Really glad to have you. Thanks for coming. Oh, Sam, I'm so excited to ask you this first question. How did you get into skateboarding?
Back to the Future.
No way.
For real. So, some of us are old enough here to know Back to the Future. Some others out there know, but it was definitely the craze of the 80s, and I think everybody got into it, and some level or another. But what happened is, as I got into it, I actually had a neighbor that moved next door to me, and that was how we first connected. Oh, you like to skateboard? So do I. And from there, it was, well, the rest is history. So
right on. Do you remember what your first difficult trick was that you landed?
Oh, no, actually, it's way too long ago. But I remember learning tricks incrementally, and they just kind of grow on each other, right? Oh, I can do this. Oh, that's a little bit like that, and just
for example, the ollie. That is the foundation. Everybody has to learn how to ollie.
I remember ollieing my first 2x4 though. So that was, not a big deal, but it was a big deal to actually get over it. Holy smokes, I actually made it. So
I think it took me about 2 years before, because I would ollie, but I wouldn't commit. So my back foot would always stay off, would be on the ground. My front foot. It took me 2 years to finally get my foot to land both feet on the board from an ollie.
I think everybody does that. There's this weird, I don't know how to keep both feet on, but you can see the board pop and that sort of thing. So there's definitely that. So that first one was, I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't believe it. I've done so many since then. But
same. Thankfully. Once you know, you know.
Yep.
So skateboarding really stayed with you over the years. What was it about it that stayed with you?
There was a friendship that was built on skateboarding. So that was one thing that I always had. And I would like to say I got to be pretty good at it too. There is just landing that first trick, that first ollie. As I got better, I learned more tricks. I learned quite a few where it was very satisfying. There's kind of an elation that you feel when you actually make it. And there's such a huge variety that it's not you've done all the list of tricks. That's it. It's endless. It's endless.
Nice.
So you can keep going, right?
Did you learn to skateboard here in Lethbridge?
Yep. Born and raised.
Born and raised?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about when you were a kid, when you started skateboarding in the early days, what was your favorite skate spot in Lethbridge?
Oh man.
Pre-skate park days.
So pre-skate park days, my favorite skate spot would have been my neighbor's backyard, because we built ramps.
Nice.
And that's what we would do. We'd skate ramps. And I remember getting permission from parents, and it started out really small, and as we got a little bit older and a little bit more access to money and vehicles and things, these things started to grow and expand, and it got to a point where we had multiple ramps connected together, and that's where we started learning more and more tricks, and so those were my favorite. That was probably my favorite place to skate pre-skate parks. Was the backyard ramps that we had.
Nice, cool. And what about today? You still skateboard today?
Yeah, I still skateboard today.
Where's your favorite place to skateboard today?
Oh, it's interesting because I have different favorites because of experience. I have a soft spot for the SLP skate park. I put a lot of time into that. I enjoy the Legacy skate park. I think the nice, large, wide open spaces. I enjoy the Youth One ramp, and they're being able to be involved with them and skating there. LCI has a ramp on their stage now. Like there's lots of cool places to skateboard. So
yeah, that's really good. How would you describe the Lethbridge skateboards community?
I think it's pretty tight knit. Like I think that there's a camaraderie amongst the skaters that you skateboard, I skateboard, we skateboard, that's cool, right? Sort of thing. And so there's always a welcome between each other. There's always an excitement for each other. There, when they land a new trick, or just to see each other again. Oh, it's been a long time, or how you doing, that kind of thing. So there's just a good feeling there. Like a camaraderie.
Nice, I love it. So before we get into some of the talk I want to have about your background as a structural engineer and how that relates to skateboarding, I just want to ask you like a little bit of a deeper question. Like for you, what do you think what do you think the philosophy of skateboarding is? Or like what's the underlying philosophy of skateboarding or skateboarders?
I mean, when I was growing up, like I said, I started skateboarding around the time Back to the Future was a thing. So I was 9-10 years old, and I played team sports, and I started skateboarding, and I enjoy team sports. I still enjoy them, but I like skateboarding because I didn't have to wait for my scheduled practice or my scheduled game or availability for everybody else and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a chance to go do my own thing. But in the early 90s, when skateboarding, there was a hype of skateboarding that kind of died. And then in the early 90s, those that continued skating because they enjoyed it, they found something about it. But there was also this, kind of a culture around skateboarding too. And I think that culture of skateboarding is, I enjoy this. It's a way of expressing myself, a little bit counterculture, a little bit of individualism, and I think that really is an extension of what skateboarding is it's a way to physically express who you are through a sport, an activity, something like that.
Yeah, I think that's beautifully said. Absolutely. Okay, so I wanted to ask, do you think skateboarding is an art form?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Why do you say that?
There's different times when you can be skateboarding with friends and you can all do the same trick or try to do the same trick, or you're all learning to do the same trick or whatever it might be, but nobody does it exactly the same as the other person. Everybody has, everybody's body's different, everybody's skateboard's different, everybody's setup is different, and the way that those tricks are accomplished are always look a little bit different.
Yeah.
And so there's that in the art form. There's different speeds and different styles and different attitudes towards it, and there's people that are very technical, lots of flips, lots of spin, lots of grinds and combinations and things that are just, they're remarkable to watch. And then there's people that are very much, the extension of surfing, like to flow, like to feel that, just the roll of the wheels beneath their feet, and you get into things like longboards or other things. Just it's so broad.
It is.
That I don't know how it cannot be interpreted as an art form, right? So I would say it's an art form, but it's also it's recreation, it's sport, it's
personal development.
Yeah.
It's and then it's also a really broad culture, which we'll talk a little bit more about after. But I wanted to ask a little bit about tell me, how did the Lethbridge Skateboard Association start, and how did you guys get this first skate park built in Lethbridge? Well, because there's the first one that's behind the BMX track.
Yes.
And that's been there a long time.
So that's been there a long time, and actually something about my childhood was always wanting to have a skate park, and there was briefly one where the City Hall parking lot is now, where the old YMCA was. And that was there for just a short period of time. But between that and the skate park at Dave Elton Park, there was a big gap where there wasn't one. I actually had gone away to university and things when the Dave Elton Park was built. So I wasn't around for it to be built or anything, but I was definitely grateful that it happened, because I felt it needed to happen, and thanks to the people in the city that took the time and effort and money to make that happen. So it was always fun to come home and see there it is. Fast forward another 10 years from the time that park was built, and the skateboarding world is growing again, and the sport, the activity has evolved where it's a little bit different, not significantly different, but it is a little bit different, and probably more importantly is the approach to building skate parks had changed. Better technologies, better applications to build quality skate parks and that sort of thing. So the Lethbridge Skateboard Association, was one of its mission statements was to build new facilities for the skaters in the city. And I want to say it was 2010, 2011 when it was organized. And at the time,
I remember you guys did like a pizza fundraiser at the Elton Skate Park.
Pizza. We tried all the things, like pizza, hot dogs, hamburgers, all the little barbecue things, bottle drives, that kind of stuff. And they're kind of more like exercises in futility when you start looking at the cost of a skate park, right?
Yeah.
So you sell 100 hot dogs and you make $100, and you're like, okay, well, we only have to do 5,000 more hot dog sales like this to get a skate park. So,
yes.
So we realized that for our demographics, mostly youth, young adults, we don't have a lot of money, and so that becomes really hard to be like, okay, well, we're just gonna come up with $500,000 to build this skate park, and it'd be great. And so the Skateboard Association was formed as a way to unify the voice, provide some of the technical aspects to a fundraising group, being registered with the province and that sort of thing as a nonprofit. That made us eligible for things like grants and working with the city and that kind of thing. So that was a necessary thing that had to be done so that we could move forward and have these discussions with the city. And it took, we had a lot of time, we spent a lot of time meeting with administration and a lot of time meeting with different members of city council at the time, explaining what we're doing, trying to educate on how skate park construction has changed and how it's being brought into the city as opposed to, hidden off in a corner and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I gotta ask, what was the support like from the city when you first started? Because I know they came around and are nothing but 100% supportive, but was it always that way?
No.
No, you had to garner support, right?
There's a little bit of how much do I say without getting myself in trouble.
Yeah,
right?
But you obviously had some adversaries and some naysayers.
There were definitely people that weren't in favor of what we were doing. Skateboarding's carried a negative stigmatism for a long time. We're, like I mentioned earlier, kind of the counterculture stereotype. We just wreck things that were just, getting in people's way and that kind of stuff. And so to make presentation to city admin or city council, there were those that felt that, here these hooligans come again to try to ask for money to build a skate park, and we've already built them a skate park and this and that. So we've had a bunch of, there's a lot of time to try to communicate with them to a point of where it's like, okay, this is what's going on. This is where skaters have evolved to. This is what the demographic is.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember actually the first time I stood in front of city council going, here I am, I'm in my mid-30s, I'm a tax-paying citizen, married, kids, and I like to ride skateboards. So it's not as focused as, it's this specific group only anymore.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot more diversity.
Yeah, of course, because
so.
like the skate park usage has dramatically changed. It's gone from exclusively only maybe skateboarders and BMXers to even back in 2010, the skate park saw like tons of BMXers, people on rollerblades, kids on scooters, and so the demographic of the skate park itself changed a lot, and it became really like a place for youth and young adults to go and recreate.
I mean, there was definitely apprehension when the SLP skate park was first brought to development permit. There was a lot of people that didn't like the idea of building it, and we had to go through the subdivision appeal board and defend the idea of building a park, building a skate park.
Mm-hmm.
And happy that came to fruition, and happy that we were able to get it built. One of the things that I found really interesting is after it was built, I had enough of a relationship going on with the members of city council at that time that I was able to have conversations with them. And in one way or another, each of the council members were very congratulatory to the success of the skate park.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one said, of all of the capital funding that we used, it just went through CIP.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's the capital improvement projects.
yeah, so the budget just went through, and I mean the city put in about half the funds for the skate park, and but on the grand scale, it's not a big fee. It's not a big cost compared to the whole capital budget, right? But I remember one saying, of all the money we spent in that budget, this was the best spent money.
Because it's just the most utilized.
Well, and it really was. Even today, you drive by, there's still somebody there every day.
At all hours.
And it's usually more than somebody. There's usually multiple people there.
Yeah.
And now we have more skate parks, and they're used just as frequently.
It's always the hardest to get the first one. You know what I mean?
It really is.
I want to ask if you could speak to our viewers, because you had such a success advocating the city council for a project that not too many people were supportive of, but you kept at it, you got her done, and you were successful in your mission. What advice would you give somebody who wants to petition or advocate the city for a project? Not necessarily within sport or skateboarding, but just if you want to go in front of the city to get your ideas heard, what advice would you give to them?
I think you need to have good resources. Who's on your side? What can you reference? Like if you're writing an essay in school, you got to cite your references,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you need to be able to present information to the city that can be validated. The second thing is objectivity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all want to stand in front of the people that are making decisions and use our emotions to persuade them to follow our dreams, but it's not necessarily our emotions that are going to get the check signed at the end of the day. It's really what is the purpose of this project and how is it actually going to impact, what's the outcome going to be, and what are the actual factors of that project that you're trying to do.
So be well researched, be ready to cite references, and just bring some objectivity to the floor.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then also find out who's on your side. There's always somebody who's going to support you, and you want to obviously gather your supporters.
That's true.
Yeah.
Like I said, I had the chance to meet with most, if not all, of City Council, and have discussions with them, whether it was email, face-to-face, text message, phone calls. There's lots of different ways to communicate
Mm-hmm.
with them, and just to give them a chance to hear you out. This is where I'm coming from. These are the reasons why, and there are definitely those that will get behind you, and there's those that need a little bit more time to understand where you're coming from. So
Well, in many ways, I feel like petitioning the city is a lot like skateboarding. You know, don't quit, keep trying, never give up. Right? Like that's a big hardcore belief for skateboarding. All right, you guys, we're just going to cut to a short break. We will be right back. Great, so Sam happens to be a structural engineer with Sigma Rho Squared here in Lethbridge. Sam, like, how did you get into engineering and why?
Interesting story, since we talked about skateboarding. I mentioned earlier that we used to build ramps, and my friends and I would draw them out, try to make sure we knew what the measurements and everything were, and we'd create plans so that we actually got around to building it. We knew we had the right materials and that sort of thing, and we'd go build them. You know, move ahead a few years, and I'm trying to figure out what to do for a career. And I always liked drafting, and I always liked the creative side of building these ramps. But I didn't really get introduced into what engineering was in school until I was in university. Trying to figure out what I was going to do, you know, taking business, because that's what you take when you don't know what else you're going to take. And my brother was doing homework one night, and I looked over and what are you doing? He's like, well, it's an engineering class. I'm like, it had beams and trusses and that kind of thing, and this is fascinating to me. And that was really, oh, that's what engineers are. They're the people that do these designs and create buildings. And that's where I got started from.
Like just right away it clicked with you, right?
It almost was an instantaneous click. I'm like, oh. So, yep.
Cool. And here we are. Awesome. So you've built a lot. Well, I know that you didn't necessarily build the skate park, but I know that I'm sure that it was really exciting to be a part of that process for the community.
Yeah, I mean, as an engineer, I was involved because I was part of the Skateboard Association, but it was nice to be able to use my expertise in reviewing the designs and that kind of stuff that were presented for tender, for construction, and just make sure that, you know, everything was there that I would have expected to see from a design professional. And it was fun to go to site and meet the crews. And interesting story again, the project manager happened to be my neighbor that I used to build ramps with as a
way.
kid.
Love
So
that.
small world. He's moved to Calgary now, but the company that built the skate park was his company in Calgary, and they were down to do that. So
nice, I love that.
Nice to connect with him again that way. So
yeah, it's nice because when skateboarding's in your heart, like it really does stay with you through your whole life. And I think that's something that's really special. Like even if you don't skateboard anymore, like when you hear that sound of a skateboard grinding on the sidewalk,
Yeah.
you're like, ooh, what's that sound? You know,
Yeah.
you know right away. You're like, who is? Like it's such a. It does stay in your heart even if you're not skateboarding. So for all of you watching this who don't skateboard anymore, I know that it's still a part of a little bit of who you are.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, and we're getting older, and that's, you know, I know there's things that I would love to be able to do again that aren't quite.
Yeah, well,
cards,
it's like physics takes over, and that's actually kind of part of our next segment here. So as a structural engineer, structural engineering is often called the bones and muscles of buildings and structures.
Yep.
So we thought we'd do a segment called Bones and Muscles, and we're going to talk with Sam, a structural engineer, about breaking down the physics of doing a skateboard trick. Okay, let's see what the first one is.
Hey, you want to watch?
Yeah, we'll watch together.
Okay.
Yeah, here we go.
Ollie, manual kick. Ooh, dark slide.
Dark slide. Okay, should we watch it again? Okay, the first thing he does is the...
Okay, so here we go.
Yeah.
So Ollie, manual. Half flip to dark slide.
So how does first of all the ollie, like he had to, like how do you, what's the physics behind him just ollieing onto the box?
So ollieing
into manual.
Ollieing is effectively making a skateboard jump, right?
Mm-hmm.
And your feet aren't connected, so you have to find a different way to create that force to lift it up. So it's really about center of gravity and beating the acceleration of gravity.
Beating the acceleration of gravity.
Yeah, so
you have to use
I
the
want to use
force.
my hands and all this kind of stuff. There's when your skateboard's rolling down the sidewalk, it has its own center of gravity, and as you snap the tail of the board to get it to lift, its center of gravity changes. And if you watch an ollie, there's always a kick of the front foot. There's always a kick of the front foot, and the idea of that kick is to push the board forward while its center of gravity has been displaced above ground. And if you can do that fast enough, gravity can't pull the skateboard down fast enough. Instead, the skateboard comes up.
Very cool. Nice.
So, yeah.
So how does he do it so that he lands to manual?
Practice.
And pain.
Right. Yeah, no doubt. So landing in manual is finding balance. So it's levers, right? And there's definitely a level of skill to be able to know where your feet are going to catch the board, so that only the one set of wheels is on the ground, and maintaining that balance while he rolls through to do his next trick, the half flip. And that's again like a modified ollie, so the same whole motion of snapping the tail and kicking forward. This time though, it's not a direct kick forward, there's a little bit of a kick to the side to help rotate the skateboard as well. So, and then the dark slide looks really cool. I want to say it's easy. It looks easy, it's just an upside down skateboard. It's not. And then to get to the end of it and flip the board over, similar idea to an ollie, moving one leg, allowing the board to rotate, change of center of gravity, and hopefully you flip it fast enough that you.
So that's kind of interesting.
all
In
the way
this
over.
trick, with these three different segments of the trick, he's essentially using very similar elements to make the trick. It's like almost like a repetitive pattern, but in three different applications to make that trick happen.
Right.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, let's look at the next one. Okay, let's watch the next trick.
Okay, ready?
Okay, I'm ready. Ooh, oh wow, see, that to me is like,
That's amazing.
that was amazing. That's a great example of like a technical trick, but that also combines like just the flow and artistic expression of skateboarding.
That's a good point. Like, it's not fast. It's not. It's
Super
lots
technical with
lots
6
of
different
balance,
components. Lots of balance.
Lots of balance.
On
Using the
a
incline.
sloped,
Yeah.
on an inclined surface. Should we watch it just one more time?
Yeah.
Just to sort of get, so what's the physics of his balancing on an incline like that? Is it just about the center of gravity, or is there more to it than that?
I mean, center of gravity always matters. You can see his arms flailing, but to add into, rotation, that's definitely trying to find, when you spin, centripetal forces, they want to throw you out. You got to make sure that you're leaning properly to make sure you stay over your board. On the incline, it's an additional, acceleration, deceleration. Quite a difficult trick to make those, even just the spins that they look relatively simple, but not that simple with the changes in slope. And then, he just casually finishes with a backside 180 flip.
Just like effortless.
Which is excellent. So
Excellent. So I know, like in skateboarding, they say to use the force. Like, what does that mean? Are they talking about Star Wars? May the force be with you. Use the force.
Sometimes.
Use the force, Luke. Yeah. Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes you just gotta give her and hope it all works out.
Yeah. Do you think there's like a spiritual connection to skateboarding? Like, because I mean, the things that they accomplish and do, it looks like it's beyond physics, or the realm of possibility.
It almost seems like there has to be, right? I mean, and that goes back to the art of it, just the creativity and people going, yeah, I think if I could do this, then I can do that, and just how things have evolved over the years. It's remarkable
Like
how talented they are.
Have we gone from like the Rodney Mullen putting an ollie on flat ground to like the 2020 Olympics? Like, it's thank you. All right, good. So we're going to take it from one extreme to the next. We just broke down a little bit about how the physics apply to skateboarding and how to break it down. When you skateboarded, did you used to break down the math in your head? Did you used to think about these types of physical? Because you started skateboarding before you even knew you wanted to be an engineer. Did you have that kind of left brain where you're like, hey, force
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't necessarily doing the calculations from the perspective of what I would do now, but for example, when we started building ramps, one of the questions was, well, how much flat do you put on the bottom of a ramp? And it was a combination of what works well with the materials we're using, how much time do you have to react to what's coming. If they're too far apart, you're not going to make it up the other side. So we played with that and tried to figure that out. And so, yeah, there's definitely a science behind that sort of thing. There's definitely a mental idea like, okay, if I go this fast and I hit this obstacle, I'm going to hit this obstacle about here, which means I'll have this much to finish my trick. And I do that. I'm sure there's others out there that don't even give it two
thoughts.
milliseconds.
It's this feeling.
Yeah,
It's a feeling.
right?
It's this
So-
feeling. Yeah, I see that a lot with skateboarding.
And it might be a case of getting older too and being more calculated on what's the risk if I do this and
My wheels
what's
stay
the
on the
risk if
cement.
I don't do this.
True. Well, actually, that's a good segue into like the risk of what if I don't do this. We've actually have a couple clips to dissect together about some epic falls and perhaps some misgauging of physics.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, so you guys are ready for that one?
Yeah, we'll do that one
Bring
real
it.
quick. Because we've already been talking for 30, like we try to keep it under 40 minutes, so.
All right, so we'll show the first one. The first one goes
Oh gosh,
to,
I don't even want to look.
The very first one goes up to 11 seconds.
Okay.
And then
'Kay.
when that one's done, you guys can
A lot
talk
of
about
these
it, and
are-
I'll just pass it back and I'll queue up the next one.
Okay. Thanks. Okay. The first one, oh my gosh.
This is going to hurt to watch.
It always
I'm-
does.
it's
Forewarning,
already
this
hurting.
will hurt to watch.
I know, I'm
So
already
we stop at it starts at 11 or
No, it
No, it
starts
goes
at the beginning and just goes to 11.
to
Okay,
11
gotcha.
seconds. Okay,
Alright.
here we go. Woo! Oh my gosh, how fast do you think they're going? They're doing like an easy 55 there. Oh! Okay, one, always check your traffic. Was that his spotter? Was that the spotter who was supposed to make sure that no cars were coming? Because if that was the spotter, like, terrible spotting. Or do you think that was just a random pedestrian?
I have no idea.
Okay.
But like, what kind of these things are hard to talk about. Like the amount of crashing I've experienced, like I've got nerve damages and this and that. I've got repaired knees. I've got all that fun stuff. But this guy's hauling downhill and totally rams into whoever that was, like instantaneous stop.
Okay, I saw
Okay.
speed wobbles. Like, why was he getting the speed wobbles?
Speed wobbles. Balance, right? When you're on a skateboard, you're not perfectly balanced. You have to flex your feet, and that's gonna, steer. And then your skateboard's not perfectly aligned. So as you get going faster, the vibrations start to get to you, and they get bigger and bigger, and hence
Yeah.
speed wobbles.
Okay, two things about this clip. One, I'm very happy this person wasn't literally run over by that car.
Yeah.
But the one thing I will say is, like, that actually is a good call out to the history of skateboarding. Like, when skateboarding first started, like, that's what they did. It was all about going down the hill. Like, it was like surfing on cement and
it was
like
definitely
seeing
that.
it was. So that was a good clip. Good clip for the origin of skateboarding. The sex change like that. Oh, there it goes. Oh no! Oh! Remember that used to be a sex change? That's what people used to call that? Oh my gosh. Did they call that here in Lethbridge? That's what they called it in Montreal. That was a sex change. Ugh. So, that poor kid. I hope he can birth children after that. Oh my gosh.
That is like the worst feeling.
So what is the likelihood of skaters reproducing after an incident like that?
Well, it's still pretty high.
I mean,
Sam has four kids.
let's
Four kids.
let's not get too graphic here, but I mean, unless you sever something, it's still possible, but it's definitely not going to happen immediately after that.
He really miscalculated. So, like, what happened here? You break it down for us. Like, did he? I'll let you do it.
You can be a little comical about it.
Okay, so this is what it is. When you do a flip trick, I don't know how many times that guy's practiced that particular trick. I'm not going to doubt that it's in the hundreds of times that he's done it. But every time you make an approach, every time you go to do that move, there's a certain movement, there's a certain placement of your feet, there's a certain, balance of your body, and if anything is not quite right, the way the board behaves is different.
Oh, every time it's a little bit different because you didn't. Oh.
Yep. And so that's practice makes perfect, and it really does boil down to all those different. There's so many different variables. So
to me, it looked like he just didn't commit enough. He didn't put enough. Like he didn't hit it hard enough to make the board flip around fast enough. Like it was because sometimes, like you said, if you hit it too hard, it over rotates. If you don't hit it hard enough, it under rotates. So he just got his pressure or his force off.
Yeah.
How much force to use.
So.
Okay, well, I'm glad that's over. Are you okay?
It's never fun watching. I mean, it's never fun watching.
No, it isn't never fun watching.
That one was really soup to nuts.
Touche. Sam, I wanted to ask just one other question before we play like a little game. I like to exit with my guests. Is what advice would you give skateboarders today?
Have fun. It's fun. Like that's really what it is. Don't let somebody else try to define your style. Don't let somebody else tell you if you're good or not. If you enjoy it, even so much if it's just the feel of the board rolling under your feet, that's what it is. And if you're into it enough that you start getting into the tricks and that sort of thing, make sure you have fun with it still.
Nice, I like it. Okay, are you ready for 10 questions?
Yep, bring it.
Okay, so it's like just a rapid fire game where you can you just give me your just your immediate response.
First words that come to mind.
First word that comes to mind. Okay. What's your favorite word?
My favorite word? Probably favorite. I mean, literally, it's my favorite word.
What's your least favorite word?
I'm not allowed to say it on camera.
Okay, well, we'll cut to question 7. Okay, well, what turns you on?
Oh, geez. I like laughing.
And what turns you off?
Grumpy people.
What sound or noise do you love?
What sounds do I love? I love the sound of the click-clack of skateboard wheels on the sidewalk.
Nice. And what sound or noise do you hate?
I think cars and just the bustle of a city.
Interesting. Okay, cool. And hey, what? This is the question you won't want to answer. What's your favorite curse word?
My favorite curse word? Oh, geez. Fuck's probably my favorite curse word.
You're not the only one.
Yeah.
All right. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
If I could be something else. It's a really interesting question because I'm so immersed in what I do, I don't think about it very much. Professional athlete would always be fun.
Right on. And what profession would you never like or not like to attempt?
Medicine.
Yeah.
That's extension of the crashes.
Yeah.
I just don't have the stomach for it.
So if heaven exists,
Okay.
What would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Welcome home.
Nice. Beautiful. I love it. Nice. That's great. Awesome, you guys. This is Sam Richards, our guest today. Yesterday was Go Skateboarding Day. I think every day. Yeah, we did forgot to talk about that. Make today Go Skateboarding Day. And we'll see you at your local skate spot. Have a great time. Have a great time with your skateboard. Have fun. Be creative. Be rebellious. Find your creative spirit in skateboarding. It's a beautiful art form. Be well and be safe.